Today we are discussing about the Jukun Kingdom. The Jukun Kingdom. The Jukun Kingdom happened to be one of the well-organized political units that existed in West Africa. The kingdom was very influential and existed in parts of the present-day Nigeria, some of the Nigerian states where this kingdom existed were Taraba, Benue, Nasarawa, Plateau, Adamawa, and Gombe States. And also the influence of the empire got to some areas in Cameroun, northwestern Cameroun, and also some parts of Chad Republic. The kingdom was a well-organized kingdom with very good operational capacity and operational methods. Very influential. Now let's look at the possible origin. But also this particular kingdom was established by the Jukun people, and that's from where the name, came up. The Jukun Kingdom, and it was established by the Jukun people. Now let's have a little look at the origin of the Jukun people. The Jukun people happen to be one of the ethnic groups in Nigeria. Now, their origin, just like most ethnic groups in Nigeria and in East Africa, their origin has this issue of uncertainty. There are theories that tend to exist which try to explain their possible origin. Most of those theories, some of them can frankly be very ridiculous. That's ridiculous in the fact that that is the major problem that we have in African history. The issue of external influences or external projections which are unacceptable. For instance, some theorists tend to link the origin of the Jukun people to a certain Baghdad prince called Bayajida. They said that the Jukun happened to be the Jukun people came in by the existence of one of the sons of Bayajida. Bayajida happened to, as the story goes, was a prince from Baghdad that left Baghdad, which is in present-day Iraq, and came into Africa, went towards West Africa, and then had some issues where he killed a certain snake and married a certain queen, and then by the end of the day, he himself and the queen had some children which they refer to as the legitimate children, and then he also went ahead and also had other set of children through other women which are looked upon as the illegitimate children. And this theory attempted to explain the origin of the Hausa people, and in addition to some other tribes like the Nupe and the Jukun. So the Jukun, the theory claimed to be one of the illegitimate sons of Bayajida. The truth is that the oral tradition of the Jukun people do not support this theory. The oral tradition and the oral analysis carried out by the researchers never accommodated the concept of Bayajida. Alright, another theory is the Egypt link. Some theories tend to also claim that the Jukun originated from Egypt and came in southwards towards the Chad region, had issues with some of the people that were living in that area, fought some wars, and then moved southwards, where they settled around the Benue River axis. But the truth also is that this Egyptian theory tend to focus more on the analysis of cultural similarities. And cultural similarities alone is not a major concept. It's not the only concept for someone to establish or put into place the possible origin of any group of people. Now, but by the analysis of the traditional origin existed in, or that exists in the Jukun Kingdom even till now, there are other lovely concepts, but the truth is that the direct analysis or the right direct existence of the possible origin of the Jukun is a bit very sketchy. By their analysis, or by the analysis of oral traditions, historians were able to identify the fact that the Jukun may have been living in the area where they established the kingdom for quite some time. Yes, there may be issue of migration, which actually cannot be said to be migration from a long distance. There were shifts from one position to another. And the Jukun were known to have established a powerful empire called Kwararafa Empire. Some theorists or some historians may write for you Kwararafa. But the problem is this: the precise history of Kwararafa or Kwararafa, or whichever way you want to call the empire, is not also very clear. A lot of persons stated, so a lot of theorists stated that it was a very influential empire, but that the empire collapsed due to some issues. But most of these theories tend not to disagree. Some believe that the empire collapsed due to external attacks. Some also believe that the empire collapsed when the inhabitants of the empire witnessed strong natural disaster. But whichever way, the important thing there was that an empire called Kwararafa existed. Now, from that concept, after the collapse of Kwararafa, the Jukun people moved from where Kwararafa was established and moved to different areas. Now, in this movement, they started living in communities. There were little or no general concept as regards the Jukun Kingdom. Now, the disappearance of Kwararafa was a problem. So they are living in communities which became a new life style. Okay, now with the collapse of Kwararafa Empire, the Jukun people moved towards the Benue River lines. Now, with this new settlement, they actually started settling in communities, different communities, Jukun communities. But at the time, they felt the desire to reconvene to build a strong union. And this brought about trials and moves to create a better and stronger political entity. Now, in an attempt to create a better political entity, they established different capitals at different times. The first capital happened to be Bepi. When they found out that Bepi wasn't that suitable, they transferred their capital to Puje. From Puje, as well, they moved their capital to Ukari. So Ukari became the capital of Jukun Kingdom for a very long time, up to the point of the collapse of the empire, of the kingdom. You know, the concept of kingdoms and empires are different. In a kingdom has mainly one is a particular people or maybe an ethnic group or tribe or a particular tribe, while empire comprises both comprises a lot of people and a lot of territories. Now it is referred to as Jukun Kingdom because majority of the territories, if not all the territories, we are Jukun territories or Jukun speaking people's territories. So let's look at the factors that contributed to the to the power and influence of Jukun Kingdom. There are three major factors. One of them happened to be the political organization. The second one was military organization, while the third one was economic organization. The political structure of, let's look at the political structure of Jukun Kingdom. The political structure of Jukun Kingdom was very lovely and somehow refined. Yes, the political control was centered around the king, which had the title Ako. The title of the king was Ako. And the king had divine powers or divine kingship status. So he was seen as a representative of the gods and also the people. Because of the traditional religion that exists or still existed or that still exists in Africa, a whole lot of structures of kingdoms and empire were built based on that. So Dako had both legislative, judiciary, and at the same time executive powers. So the position of Dako is the highest authority in the land. He had the right to deport someone, has the right to execute somebody, to fine, to seize properties, and also depending on the person's crime and then offenses. So, but there were some concepts of checks. They didn't just allow the Ako or the king to misuse the powers. There are some concepts of checks. For instance, there was the position of the Abo Achuo. There was the position of the Abo Achuo. The Abo Achuo, can be looked upon as a prime minister status, but had under a unique Jukun political structure arrangement. The Abo Achuo had the right to review the sacred secret. And under Jukun culture, if a sacred or the sacred secret is reviewed, it simply means that the Ako or the king is not valid or is not wanted again. And that means he has to be deposed, and in some cases he may even be killed. So the Abo Achuo served as one of the means of checking the excesses of the Ako. Alright, now actually there's a particular relic, so a particular relic that is not supposed to be reviewed. If it's reviewed, the king is completely not wanted again. Now there are also the chief priests, the traditional chief priests, which also have the same power, which are believed to be the mouthpiece of the gods. They also work towards the checks of the excesses of the Ako. Now let's look at the military structure. The military structure. The Jukun happened to have a very lovely military arrangement and military strategies and systems. They got horses from the Hausa neighbors, with which they were able to build strong cavalry force. They got horses from the Hausa neighbors, with which they were able to build strong cavalry force. So with this strong cavalry force, they were able to force other Jukun communities into the union. So that means not every Jukun community joined the union at first. Some were forced, while some voluntarily joined the union that established the Jukun Kingdom. Well, they fought some wars also with some of their neighbors. For instance, they were said to have raided Igala, Idoma, Iguira. At the time, they also defeated Katsina, Kanu around 17th century. So this they also had issue with the Kanem-Borno Empire, which we've discussed in some other of our videos. Under my Ali Ibn al-Hajj Omar, the Jukun defeated Borno Empire, but could not take over the control of Borno Empire. So they still remain in their own kingdom status. Alright, let's look at the economic organization. The area where Jukun Kingdom was established was a very fertile area, and this encouraged agricultural practices. The Jukun people embraced agricultural practices. They produced crops like yam, groundnuts, pepper, rice, corn, oil seed. Also, they had some other livestock like ostrich, which they produced the feather that they sold, hides from cattle, cotton, indigo, and the rest. So they were involved in agricultural practices. Now the next one was that they were involved in trading. Because of their position, most people under Jukun Kingdom were seriously involved in trading activities. And at the position of Jukun, there were some very well-established markets which played a very important role in trading for the Jukun people. So there were theories or there are reports of Arab merchants coming down to Jukun to conduct businesses in those markets. Also, when Europeans came, the people were also involved in businesses, chain of trading, although they play mostly the role of a middleman chain from the northern part, produce products which were targeted towards the coastal area of what is known today as Nigeria. They were very prominent during the slave trade era. So they played the role of middlemen in the trade of slaves. So another source of income for them was tributes. Most of the external kingdoms they conquered, they did not establish direct control over them. They allowed them, but they forced them to pay tributes to their kingdom. So they forced even some Hausa city-states were meant to pay tribute to the Jukun Kingdom. Now the last source of wealth that we have on record was salt production. Before the Europeans came, Jukun Kingdom happened to be one of the major sources of salt within that region. So they were able to produce salt, which they sold within themselves and also to their neighbors through trading activities. Alright, so another income source also was crafts. The Jukun were good craftsmen. Craft activities help them in making of boats, and also there were fishermen that existed in the kingdom. With the existence of river Benue, most of the Jukun some of the Jukun people basically were involved in fishing activities. So I would say that let us look at some factors that led to the decline and fall of Jukun Kingdom. Yes, the kingdom at the time had serious issues, And these issues contributed to the decline and also the fall. One of such issues or one of such problems was the reliance of on military force, the reliance of military force and strength. So the army at the time became so weak due to constant pressures, constant wars, constant attacks from external forces. Because they were aggressive, they had serious attacks also from external forces that were trying to bring them down and also take over some of their territories. The major external force they faced were the superior powers or the superior forces of the Pabo and the Chamba. The Pabo and the Chamba people. These two major external forces seriously raided Jukun, and the constant fight they had with this set of external forces weakened their army. Most part of the war actually, but the constant attack weakened their army. So the next one was the continued wars affected Jukun economy. Because of external influences and a desire to sustain and continue their control of their territory and also some other external tributary status of some political unit outside the Jukun Kingdom. They had to continue fighting, continue defending, and this affected the economy. Most able-bodied men that they were supposed to help the economy to grow were moved towards fighting of wars, and some of them were dying while the economy suffered. So the prolonged wars seriously affected the economy as well. All right, the next one is the weaknesses in the army also gave opportunity to some of their kingdoms to start, some main parts of their kingdom to start working towards independence. Some of them happen to be also Jukun communities that were not so comfortable with the union. So they started working towards independence. And then some of the tributary states that the area conquered declared their independence and stopped paying tributes to the kingdom. All right, another thing was also constant migration. There were issues with migration, although within that region, but constant migration weakened the empire as well. Now, the next point was the Jukun leaders' involvement in divine or theocratic political structure spent a lot of time on rituals instead of kingdom building. The traditional practices of the people were so unique, and the leaders were highly involved on rituals, superstitious concepts, than actually building the empire or sustaining the growth of the army, and this affected the empire. Then another point was the abolition of slave trade. As I told you earlier that they were highly involved in slave trade activities, the abolition of slave trade seriously affected the income of the empire. So the middlemen duty they were controlling or they were practicing during the slave trade era, they lost that position because the external factors, external forces, mainly from Europe and also the British as well, British and Europe, seriously worked against the sustained or the continued slave trade activities. Now, another point was natural disaster. The empire was said to have gone through serious natural disaster issue, and their crops failed them, and this generated or created famine situation. So the empire had prolonged famine, which led to serious lack of food, even death of some of their members. And the last blow, which completely signified a total collapse of the empire, was the activities of the Fulani jihadists under Uthman Dan Fodio. And at the time, the Fulani jihadists became very adventurous. They attacked most Hausa city states and defeated them. So gradually also they started looking towards the Jukun Kingdom. Already before the attack of the Jukun Kingdom, the empire was already weak. So the Jukun people could not effectively control their kingdom against these Fulani jihadists. So by the end of the day, the Jukun Kingdom fell to the Fulani jihadists. At the same time, the kingdom was integrated into the later established Islamic Caliphate, referred to as the Sokoto Caliphate. Now, Dan Fodio, having conquered most part of what is known today as northern Nigeria, established an Islamic Caliphate called Sokoto Caliphate, and Jukun Kingdom happened to be one part of the Caliphate. And then it was made to be an emirate under the Caliphate. So, please, we have a very interesting written history of the Jukun Kingdom. You want to have a copy of what of our write-up? Please, you will see it in the comment section. See the link from where you can get it in the comment section. Please subscribe to our channel and click on the notification icon. We always make available very lovely content in African history. So we have to stop there. In the next video, we'll discuss other concepts. Thank you for being there.